Okay, it's 10:01. So we're really happy that everybody's here, and really do not mute yourselves, jump in, throw in comments, all that kind of stuff, because for sale by owners, we've all had different kinds of experiences or different thought processes on it and all of that. So we want to really talk about that as we're doing it. One thing about for sale by owners is when the market gets hot and it's a seller's market, a for sale by owner thinks, wow, this is super simple. All I have to do is put a sign in my yard or throw something on Facebook or Craigslist, and it's easy, and I can get a lot of money for my house. Well, we know how that works, right? And with the lowering inventory, buyers are out scouring everywhere they can find to find a house, and occasionally the for sale by owner might end up being our only alternative to seller customers. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yes.
Who in the past has had some really good successes selling for sale by owners? Nobody. How about listing for sale by owners? Have you had more? No. Okay, so this is probably the one thing. Oh, Tyler, jump in.
Me and Crystal just closed one.
We're talking about for sale by owners.
It was kind of easy, not easy, but it was one of my friends, and his dad wanted to, or he wanted to buy a house, but we were looking, and there was nothing in his price range. So his dad just bought a new house in Punta Gorda, and it was selling his house. So we were able to negotiate the purchase of his house for his son and his fiance. I think we did it for 3.5% or something like that. So his son bought his house. It was, I mean, we didn't have to like call him and bug him or anything, but we were able to do that. So we got that deal taken care of. That was nice.
Super. Yeah, I mean, for sale by owners are probably the scariest group of prospective listings for a realtor, because they don't know the person, they haven't established any rapport, and they're knocking on a door, they're making a phone call of someone who obviously thinks that they can sell it themselves, right? So most realtors will drive past a for sale by owner sign. They will never knock on the door. They won't call. They're just absolutely terrified of them. And to me, when I see the sign outside a house that's for sale by owner, that's like an advertisement. Hey, I'm looking for a realtor. I mean, that's the best thing that can absolutely happen, is to find a for sale by owner. So don't be afraid of them. I mean, the worst case is they slam the door in your face. The best case is they let you in and pay you a commission. So don't be afraid of for sale by owners. What we're talking about too, and buyers they'll knock on the door of that for sale by owner. So, and some really interesting statistics, and Tyler talked about getting them all put together. 8% of our sales transactions right now are for sale by owners. So 92% of the customers out there still believe in us, and we don't have to convince them that we have a tremendous amount of value. But 8% of those are for sale by owners. That's still a pretty decent amount of your business that you could get. We know the stats for sale by owners. 87% of those people who put that sign out in the yard will list with a realtor within about 45 days if they don't sell it themselves. Sometimes they will get a customer, they'll go through the contract, and it'll all fall apart for all those reasons that happen to for sale by owners, because they don't have the guidance of a realtor. So those are keep in mind your value as we're going through this whole thing. So your buyer finds a for sale by owner, and they want to make an offer. What do you do? Assume the buyer has already knocked on the door and talked to that customer. Now, how do you get involved in the transaction? What would be your first thought process? Okay, I'm going to say usually the first thing that runs through an agent's mind is, okay, the customer found a property all by themselves. Oh crap, how do I get paid? How do I get in there and figure out how to get paid, right? You do a lot of, whether you know it or not, once you start working with a for sale by owner, you're going to do a lot of work, and you need to get paid for that. So you want to think about how are you going to do that? The good part is most for sale by owners really, well, I won't say most, 50% of the for sale by owners are really willing to pay commission on it, because you've brought the customer. They're willing to pay it. It might not be the full 3% or 3.5% that you're looking for, but they will prepare it. They will pay you. Some for sale by owners think that they don't need to do that, and they'll just say, hey, it's okay, bring the buyer, just add your fee onto the price. And they're probably already at the top of the market or even above the market, right? That's one way to do that. Or how else can you get paid? The buyers can pay you as well, right? So those are generally the three ways that you can get paid for your services on that. One thing that you really have to be aware of whenever you're doing any of this is you've always got to be prepared to defend the value of you. What are you bringing to the table? What are you going to do for the customer, whether it's the seller paying you or the buyer paying you? You've got to be able to convince the sellers that you're worth hiring them. You've got to be able to convince the buyers that you're worth getting paid. And that applies to any kind of real estate transaction that you're doing, whether it's a for sale by owner, whether it's an expired, whether it's a straight listing or a buyer's presentation. You've got to be able to show your value and show your worth. We put together a bunch of different little slides and things that you can grab for talking points and things like that. I'm going to try to pull them up. Hopefully I can. If not, Joanna's going to take over and do some of the stuff. Oops, no, we don't want that. I'm going to go over to, bear with me 1 second, and you don't need to look at me, just stuff. There's this really cool thing the Orlando Association put together, and it's in app files. It's called My Realtor Duty to You. Most customers really aren't aware of how much work we do. Look at this, pages and pages and pages. There's 7 pages of what our value is. Did you share your screen? Oh shoot, no, I didn't.
Would you like me to do it?
I'm not good at that. Okay. How do I share my screen? Oh, that'd be absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. I can talk, but I'm not really good at tech. Okay, here we go. Let's try it again. Okay. Can everybody see it now? Yeah? Say yes?
Yes.
No.
Okay, thank you. All right. So there's my Realtor Duty to You. There's 7 pages. It's under the listing presentations in app files, but it really talks about everything that you do. You don't even think about it, but these are the things that you do for your customers. So you want to really layer up that value of you. Why are you worth 2? Why are you worth 3%? Why are you worth $10,000, $20,000? Because of all these different things that you do for them. There's some marketing brochures in here as well. So that you can help them. There's 100 ways to make your home sellable, all these kind of great things. Use the tools that we're providing for you and that NAR is providing for you for not just for sale by owners, but any customer that you're talking about. Maybe print some of these things out and carry them with you, because if you're just chatting with someone and they're just thinking about selling real estate, well, here's a great idea. Give them an article, give them a little brochure. That gives you some value, and it's got your name and phone number on there. You never know what they're going to keep or what they're going to talk to you about. The other really cool tool is if you go to floridarealtors.org, they have what they call free infographics. There are tons and tons of different flyers that you can print as a JPEG or a PDF, so you can print them. You can post them on social media. You can put them in text messages and things like that. They're going to give you your talking points, and they're really cool and slick, and they're designed to help you get business. So there's 7 winning tips for buyers. This 18 reasons to work with a realtor is what I want you to really think about focusing on with your for sale by owners. Why do they want to work with us? The showings, the MLS, the access, the closings, the research, all this negotiating. Really, really cool infographic there, and use it. And it also helps you, again, when you're doing some talking points. That's a really cool thing to do. If you haven't put a resume together, put some kind of a resume together. As you start doing business, keep track of your stats. How many for sale by owners have you sold over the year, or just how many properties have you sold? If you're newer in the business, grab the stats from Jones & Company Realty. We've literally sold hundreds of thousands of homes over the last 10 years, and 2020, we had a record year. So we've got those stats. You can pull those in, use those for the customers. Okay. So that's one way about selling your value. That's one piece of it.
That infographic that you just talked about, JJ, I did attach it in the chat as an image if anybody would like to download it. You can really quick to, throw it out to your customers today, and otherwise you can find everything else in app files.
Perfect. Yeah, because as we've talked about, for sale by owners don't realize the depth and all of the structure that goes into getting their house closed. Even if they've done it before, they're like, oh, we get an offer, send it over to the attorney or the title company, and then they just sit back and wait for closing and get their check. Well, we all know there's lots and lots of steps in between that. And especially in this marketplace, in Florida particularly, insurance is a huge, huge problem. For sale by owners are not really aware of all of the new changes. For those of you who got a chance to look at that hurricane seminar, Kara was really sharing how difficult it is right now to get flood insurance, to get insurance on a house with a 17-year-old roof. If it doesn't have a good wind mitigation, they've got issues. Sellers are going to go, well, my roof doesn't leak, so too freaking bad, right? So you get a contract, but if the buyer can't get insurance, they can't get a loan, and you can't get a deal, and you don't get paid. So those are the kind of things you need to keep getting in front of those sellers. Most sellers don't realize that insurance has gone up 40% this year. That is going to hit the bottom line of what everybody can get for their house. Buyers have a finite amount of money to spend, and the market's only going to hold so much of that value. So sellers are needing to be aware of those things that are going to be affecting the prices that they're asking as well. Those are things that we bring to the table as realtors. And those are questions when you're talking to the for sale by owner that your buyer found. So, Mr. Seller, do you currently have flood insurance on your house? Are you required to have flood insurance on your house? And where do you have your current insurance? Perhaps that could help us in getting the sale. And I'm speaking presumptively when I'm talking to the seller. We're a team, Mr. Seller. Don't think of it as an adversarial position with that seller. He just simply needs our help. And the reason that they are trying to do it by themselves is always money. They think somehow if they sell it by themselves, they're going to make more money. Statistically, they will make 10 to 20% less in a normal market without a realtor. So we bring a lot of value to the table. And even when they pay our commission, they're still putting more money in their pocket. There's some nice little statistics and things you can find on realtor.org at NAR to justify those kinds of things when you start talking to them. Because even in a great seller's market, again, the market can only hold so much. You have to worry about appraisals. And sellers don't seem to care much about appraisals when they put their price on there. But we, as an agent, and we having the buyer, everybody's got to be aware of what it appraises for. Even a cash buyer is not willing to overpay for a house nowadays. The market is hot, but it's not stupid anymore. So the buyers are going to look to the seller to justify that sale price they put on there and hope that it's going to appraise. How did the seller come to that price? Who knows? He's going to tell you, oh, I looked on Zillow and it says my house is worth this. So I think that's what I should ask for. Be prepared with your buyer and your seller to discuss the comparables that are out there. Do that research on those pending sales that are going to affect the value. Look for private sales through either the tax rolls or RPR. Go on Remind. Go dig deep and find the supportive value for that number. Our buyers don't want to overpay. Our sellers don't want to leave money on the table. So it's up to us to show everybody what the top dollar that they're going to be able to get for their property is. And that's going to be your biggest task right now in this marketplace as a realtor, is to find the real values in there, because it's gone up so crazy that appraisals are going to become an issue with that. Appraisals are also looking real strongly at condition, again, because of insurance. They're looking at roofs. Insurance now is looking at plumbing, for God's sakes. My son's house, when they went in to do, they actually physically went through and did an inspection on his house and said, oh, you have old faucets. Whoever would have thought, right? We're not going to insure you unless you change your faucets. What the heck? I know, crazy. So when you've got that seller, that for sale by owner, he's not thinking of having to change his faucets, or he did, and then he thinks it's worth $1,000. So again, what's the cost of a faucet, Mr. Seller? Do those kind of things. Be prepared to talk to the seller, the for sale by owner, about what their rights are as a seller. Some of them don't really understand that they do have rights, like with our as is contract. They have the right to refuse to fix anything. But did they know that they also have the responsibility by law of disclosing anything that is wrong with the property that you can't find? Most for sale by owners don't even think about the conditions of the house. They don't think about that window in the back bedroom that hasn't opened for 20 years because they just don't do it. But that's safety issue. That's ingress and egress, right? So insurance companies are going to get upset with that. Appraisals are going to get upset with that. The inspectors are going to get upset with that. And the buyers are going to get upset with that because it's a structural defect, if you will, on the house. So those are things that you can talk to the seller about. You can present that we have the seller's property disclosure statement. I would really highly suggest giving that to the seller and say, you know what? Our buyer is going to be looking for this. So I would like you to take, 10 minutes, walk through your house. I'll be glad to do it with you. And let's put this property disclosure statement together before the buyer brings you an offer. That way, you know what the condition of your house is and can support your value. And then I've got something to bring back to the buyer to say, hey, the house is in really, really great shape here. And the seller's backing it up with this piece of paper. That's going to help a for sale by owner. And I pretty much can guarantee you there isn't one realtor out there who's asking the seller to provide a seller's property disclosure statement on a for sale by owner. Look how many of our agents don't even do it on a regular listing. So that takes you up. Talk to the seller about title companies. Talk to them about escrow. And they're going to go, what? I don't know where. Oh, I'll take the deposit. No, you won't, Mr. Seller. You've got to be able to get through those kinds of things. Talk to them about some of the repairs that they may need to do as well when you're doing that seller's property disclosure statement. Like we talked about the window. There might be some things that they feel are hugely important that they need to fix, like a little sidewalk crack. It may be nothing. So your job is to guide them through all of that. And as you're walking through that house with that for sale by owner, doing the property condition report, building rapport with the seller and all that good stuff, have your commission agreement ready. And do you want to pull that up, Joanna? Okay, in App Files and in Form Simplicity, Florida Realtors has created a commission agreement. I don't know how many of you online have used it before. This is going to take the place of your listing agreement. This is simply talking about money. You do not, I repeat, do not want to take a buyer and introduce them to the house, whether it's by internet, whether it's by an email, whether it's in person. You do not want to introduce them to that seller until you know how you're getting paid, which is taking back to where we first started. The commission agreement is designed for the seller to pay you a commission. You can set it up as a flat fee, or you could set it up as a percentage of the price. And you can see where all those little green little boxes are. You might want to seriously think about a flat fee kind of a situation as opposed to a percentage. Psychologically, the seller knows then you're not pushing the prices up. The buyers know you're not just pushing the price up to make more money. If you have a flat fee, it's a little bit easier sometimes to negotiate out the perfect number to make everybody happy. Be prepared to talk about how this works. Now, this commission agreement is designed specifically to get all the money from the seller. This is not with the buyer presentation. If you're also doing a for rent by owner, this also works for that if you want to do that. Get the seller to sign it prior to showing the property. That way you have some assurance legally that we can defend and you can get paid on it. Now, take it over to the flip side. If the seller is totally unwilling to pay your money, let's talk about getting it from the buyer. We have the exclusive buyers agreement. And I don't know if Joanna has that pulled up. I do, if not. Do you have it, or shall I pull it up? Okay, exclusive buyer agreement. As a transaction broker, you can work for the buyer as a transaction broker. We're not going to talk about ad agency. That's a whole nother ball of wax. But the exclusive buyer agreement is something you should be talking about with your buyer from the beginning. Don't bring it up when you're ready to write the contract. You've talked about the value that you're providing to them. You're showing them your worth, and now you're asking them to agree with the value of you. The exclusive buyer's agreement also sets out their parameters for what they're looking for. And this is very good. It also starts getting the buyer thinking about what they want to buy. There's our obligations on what we're going to do. And towards the bottom of there, it talks about how they're going to pay us. Because obviously we have a business plan and we get paid X number of dollars per transaction. That's how we do what we're going to do. So if you can, I don't know if you can slide that at all, Joanna. Up, down, toward, yeah. Keep going. Okay, we're right in here, the retainer and compensation. That's where it talks where we're getting paid. So you can talk about flat fees on there as well. And you can also do percentages. So all of these little words in here, what you're going to see is we're going to try to, they are going to say, okay, you're worth 3% and we promise to pay you 3%. The other words that are in there, if you look in there, is we will get paid, we can get paid from the MLS, right? And if we don't get paid from the MLS, the buyer makes up the difference. Or in the case of a for sale by owner, if they're not paying us, then the buyer agrees to pay us that amount of money. This can work really well if you've got a buyer who's looking for something very, very, very specific. They may be willing to pay you directly out of it. And we talked about flat fees as well. So if you go into a for sale by owner and they say, you know what, you're expecting me to just add it on and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the money comes out of the purchase price, right? The buyer is going to pay for it through the purchase price. The seller is going to compensate us through the purchase price as well. So it's just a matter of how you're going to call it. So Mr. Seller, if the buyer is paying me, generally what the buyer is going to do then is they're going to look for a credit from you, Mr. Seller, towards closing costs and things like that. And it's generally going to be the amount of my commission. So if they're going to put it in there somewhere, that's one way we can get paid, right? That's probably the biggest thing that we can do in there. If the seller agrees to pay us, then it's super, then it's a whole super simple kind of thing. You may be treating the for sale by owner like an outside broker. So instead of the 6 or 7%, be ready to get 3%, which is absolutely fine, right? You're not spending a lot of money on the marketing and the drone shots and all of that kind of thing. So it can work really well, but take the time and pay attention to the wording that's in the buyer's agreement. Feel comfortable with it and use it. Use that commission agreement with the seller. They're very good forms. They're simple. They're really not that complicated. And that commission agreement is very easy. It's not near as threatening to a for sale by owner than coming in and saying, I've got a buyer, but I'm not going to show them unless you sign a full listing agreement with me. Correct? So when you have a commission agreement, it also takes some of the responsibility away from you and puts it onto the seller, because we're not working for him promising to market and do all those kinds of things. What we are promising to do is assist them and get them through that. So do be prepared to do those same kind of things like you would with a regular seller. We talked about establishing the value. Talk about title companies. Talk about the inspection process. Talk about the mortgaging process. Get them through exactly the steps that are going to happen when you bring them a contract. So when you bring them a contract, make sure that all parties are there. If you've got a husband and wife, make sure they're there, because you don't want to have to do this twice. Get there and start talking to them about the offer, just like you normally would. The difference is going to be when you get to page 11, right? There's going to be there might be something in there where the sellers are agreeing to give the buyers some help with costs. They may all of a sudden start seeing addendums because you're working with the buyer. So you might have put an insurance contingency with there. You might have put an appraisal contingency in there. Sometimes the sellers aren't aware that when they close on Friday, that they have to be out of the house by Friday. So be prepared to have that discussion with them, possibly a post-occupancy agreement. That's a big tool for you as a realtor that most buyers don't even know how to put together or think about it. They'll just say, oh yeah, you can stay in the house for a week after closing, no problem. Yeah, well, no problem. There could be all kinds of problems after closing. What if 2 days after it closes and the seller's in there and the air conditioner blows up? Now you've got an issue. So those are the other values that we bring to them as a realtor. So think about using those kinds of different addendums. The for sale by owner is not going to be aware or ready for any of that. So again, you're going to have to walk everybody through it. You're going to have to be the one who knows what's going on. And with the for sale by owner, you are going to practice the art of negotiation big time from day one through getting that contract accepted all the way through closing. You're going to have to hold their hand more than any other seller, because they really, most of the time, they really aren't aware of all the stuff that goes on. And again, that's where you are going to sell your value. You're going to show it. And of course, sale by owner, if they love how you do it and they get more money in their pocket at the end of the day, they will talk about you and they will recommend you, and you will really get extra business. And of course, the for sale by owner, where's he going or she is going? You know, is she moving completely out of state? Are they looking for another house? Maybe they don't have another house already. You know, so you might be able to get additional deals off of that. This is really an untapped market. There are more and more for sale by owners right now because the market is so hot and they think they can do it. But if you go in armed with good statistics, good numbers for the value of the house, good value for you, you go and you knock on that door and you look professional, you talk professional, you are professional, you can just knock their socks off and make a fantastic deal for both you and your seller and your buyer. Your family will love it because you're going to have a commission and you can feed the little doggy. And we know how expensive dog food is nowadays, right? So I think that's most of what I wanted to share with you. I'm certainly open for questions, comments, suggestions. You know, I'm not the end all be all, but I love that pup. I mean, oh God, not going to for sale by owner door like that. They are gonna love you to death.
I just want to add in like a little personal story, as far as, you know, what's going to make you feel confident and comfortable and things that have worked for me in the past. So like you said, that buyer's agreement, if you've got that signed up front, especially in today's market, that's going to be really, really important. And you're not doing it just before you send in a contract and then they feel like they're being overwhelmed with too much. If you've already got that buyer's agreement signed and you've already had that conversation with them of, well, in most situations, the seller pays the compensation, but in the case that they don't, you will be responsible for it. Then they already have that preset in their mind. And I've had a situation before, thankfully we had a buyer's agreement and they wanted a for sale by owner situation where the seller was not willing to pay commission. You know, it was the whole line of events, you know, got the buyer's agreement signed, looked at properties for 4 months, wasn't working out. They wanted a for sale by owner. So we approached the for sale by owner with a commissions agreement. He said, no way, Jose. So we went back to our buyers and said, okay, you know, well, certainly this is an option for you, but it's going to have more closing costs. Here's how much more your closing costs are going to be due to the fact that they had to pay commission. And so they decided, you know, to go elsewhere. But that way, no matter what, we weren't juggling last minute to figure out how to have that conversation with our buyers of how we were going to get paid. You know, obviously you stress about trying to get it from the seller, but if you don't get it from the seller, you should not have to be stressing last minute to get it from your buyer and wondering if they're going to go behind your back if you've already had those conversations ahead of time.
Exactly, because you don't want to work for free. I mean, we do a lot of things for free that we shouldn't do within our industry. We just, you know, we go and we give free market evaluations and we do all these beautiful things when you're using years of expertise and knowledge and everything. So yeah, don't sell yourself short. Keep believing in yourself and have that confidence, and then they're going to follow you. Yeah, and for sale by owners, you know, they can be downright stupid. I mean, we had one, right? Our buyer knocked on the door and they had this high figure that they want, which was top of the market value, you know, and they were like, we're not going to do any repairs. We're not going to pay anything. We're not going to do anything. It's all as is. You figure it out. You pay for the title. And by the way, we want, you know, 10% non-refundable deposit down, Mr. Buyer. You know, the sellers can have unrealistic expectations. What buyer is going to hand somebody $50,000, you know, for nothing? You know, just, oh yeah, well, even if I don't close on it, you still get $50,000. I'd love to sell my house all day long and just make $50,000 non-refundable deposits. Never have to sell my house, just make money. And use those kind of stories, you know, when you're talking with sellers, when you're talking with buyers, because our job is to make sure everybody at the end of the day wins. Everybody's quiet. Yes.
So if you have a buyer and they see a house that's for sale by owner, how do you approach when you walk through the house? And it needs repairs and you don't have that property disclosure, and like the for sale by owner really is clueless about the whole process. Like, how do you approach that if you need to ask for repairs? Because you obviously want to make your buyer happy, you know? How do you approach that?
Well, yeah, I mean, and most, if you don't have a cash buyer, then you know those things that need fixed can be a problem to get the mortgage. That's probably how you would have to address that. You know, I know we live in the house, and sometimes the for sale by owners, like you mentioned, they may be in a financial bind. And that's why there's lack of repairs in the house. And that's why they're selling it by themselves, because they don't have the money to do that.
Right.
So look at some of that. If they're really big repairs, it's possible maybe that the buyer could do like an FHA rehab loan. Like if the roof is if the roof is too old. And that's a really good point for all of you too. We found at FHA, you can put a roof into a rehab loan. So don't just panic that the deal's going to fall apart. There are ways to get some of those repairs paid for. Some of the repairs, if they're really minor, you could coach the seller into fixing some of those things sometimes. They all watch HGTV, right?
Right.
You could coach them with that. If you have a handyman in your back pocket, say here's a handyman I know, he can work, really inexpensively and fix some of that stuff up. If you just simply fix those, those little hole punches in the wall and tighten up the toilet leak, and that kind of stuff, you could probably get more money for your house than with those repairs. Because once the buyer starts seeing the repairs, that little leak that might be $25 for a handyman to fix is $100 in the buyer's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that would be the kind of conversation I'd have with the seller. If the house is in horrendous shape, I mean, really horrendous shape that the seller can't fix it, there's community organizations, that will do it, that will come in and help them. So there's sometimes we end up being counselors to people too. Maybe the only reason he's selling it is because he can't afford to take care of the house and he really wants to stay in the house. So sometimes we might just actually help someone end up staying in their house by doing those kinds of things.
And John McGhee put in a comment of a really good instance that he had to. He wrote, "Don't be too desperate. After inspection for repairs, he had a FSBO seller. They waited until the last day to commit necessary repairs on the as is, had to convince the buyer that they needed to do the poker face to force the issue."
That's one way to do it too. Timing is everything on it. But I think you're right. It's just communication over and over and over, and letting them know what things are important and what aren't in a house. A dirty house can reflect a lot in the price. Buyers will see dirt in a house, and instead of that $150 or $200 it would cost to have the house professionally cleaned, that buyer's going to want $1,000 off because it's all ugly, right? So those are some of the things that you can talk about to the seller too. Is, maybe we should consider doing, having Mary Maids come in and really spark this up for you, because at the end of the day, Mr. Seller, it's going to get you more money. And the thing you really have to keep talking about the sellers, because the sellers are seeing all this stuff on TV about how the market is so hot and they can get almost any price they want. Well, that's not really what's happening, right? I mean, they're still getting great prices for it, but the buyers now are getting super picky about the condition of the property. If they're going to pay top dollar, they don't want to put more money in immediately after moving in. Gone are those days. Even in the $250,000 first time home buyer things, the prices are high. So the buyers are putting a lot of their extra money into their down payment, into their closing costs to just get into the house. So they don't have a couple of $1,000s extra to start doing those minor repairs that you normally would think when you first move into a house. So you've got to counsel that seller all the way through the whole thing. It's got to be spot on. It's got to look really good, and give them easy suggestions on how to make those things happen. We all know how to make, take vinegar and, and water and make window cleaner, right? I mean, you can do those kind of things, share those kind of tips with them. And if some of the things need to be replaced, talk about that, or maybe take them down so that they don't get it in an inspection. If you've got a ceiling fan that isn't going to work at all, everybody's going to notice that. So if you don't have the money or you don't want to replace it, put up a cheap light fixture, change it out so that you don't have those issues when people look in there. It's super simple. Like if the carpet is really sucky bad and you can't afford to replace it, maybe the best thing to do would be to take the carpet out and clean and polish, the concrete underneath it. That looks better than stinky, dirty, ratty carpet. Because stinky, dirty, ratty carpet that might be $1,500 to replace is worth $5,000 in the buyer's eyes. It's all about justifying the sale price as well. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, because I know you don't want to go in and clean it. I mean, we've all done that. I can tell you that. I know Paula's probably done the same thing. We've all gone in and said, okay, we go in to go do the open house, and what are we doing? We're scrubbing counters and we're sweeping floors and stuff to make the property look better. Just be careful about how much nice stuff you want to do. I used to volunteer my husband all the time. Oh, he'll come over and he'll tighten this, and he'll tighten that. Like, okay, you've got liability issues and all kinds of fun stuff, and then your husband's like, what do you mean you promised I would fix this for him?
For sure.
Yeah, he's not here to hear me say that. All right, well, we took 38 minutes. That's really, we really try to teach you what we can within half an hour. I think that we've done really well today. You can go back and listen to this later. When we were talking about buyer's agreements also, we have in our YouTube library a recorded session on how to get the buyer broker's agreement signed with Billy Silva, who is one of our top people for getting that signed. So it's about a 15-minute YouTube. Go in there, listen to it. There's some scripting in there so you can stop it, play it back, and work on it. It will give you a little bit more confidence with the forms. And do your homework. Look at those forms. Be ready with that. Go in there, find some of those little infographics and stuff. They're also good to go door knocking with. If you're doing door knocking nowadays, remember door knocking? It works. Not in the afternoon in Florida because it's raining, but in the morning it's really good. And think about reasons to go and canvass in your farming area, because that's where you're going to find for sale by owners. You're going to find a few expireds in your farm areas, things like that. 4th of July is coming up. That is an absolutely fantastic thing to work with your farm areas. Buy those little American flags. You can order them online. You can go to Oriental Marketing. You can go to the Dollar Tree, get some things like that. Those are good little tips to use as the summer comes up. And also start working on getting those listings, because we are coming up on Christmas in July. So watch for that. That's one of our biggest promotional events of the year. So think listing, and have a fantastic day. Peace out.